Hello world, what is up? What is up? My name is Anthony Dapolito III, and I'm the creator and founder of Dream Big & Co., the host of Dream Big Daily, and on this episode 61, we have on Chow Mui, who is now the founder and editor at Chow Media Group. It is a media company made for those in New York City, both residents and tourists, to find the best places to eat, places to go, news and resources, especially for 2020. And it's so full circle in that regard because, as she mentions in this episode, with her upbringing, growing up in Manhattan and Brooklyn in New York, she's creating a whole ecosystem for those in New York to go to. And for someone growing up in that space to then being in the world of media, as New York City often always is, but then traveling and creating her own travel blog called We Were Wanderers. She comes from an advertising background, a film space, a writing space, and there's a lot here and a lot of intersecting points, both with what we do at Dream Big & Co., but for me personally. So we get really, really deep in regard to her own life, but then the media space as well. There's a lot of pragmatic stuff here, but a lot of deep emotional pull with her own life story and journey. So enjoy this one. Hopefully you get something out of it. Leave a review, comment, like, star, whatever emblem or symbol that is meant to say, hey, you like this. Truly, we appreciate it, but nonetheless, enjoy this one. Episode 61 with Chow Mui. See you later.
I have a dream.
It's one small step for man.
I am the greatest.
You want something, go get it. Period.
Thank you for coming on. I appreciate you, Chow Mui, for joining us for this next episode.
Thanks so much for having me on board. I'm really pumped for this.
Yeah, mutual connection, Oren Davis, who we had on, not sure the episode number, but super appreciative of him as well, if you listen to this. And there's many places I wanted to start because you have I was so intrigued by your story. The fact that it's local and what you're working on is local now with where you grew up. But I would love to hear about the Chow Media Group and have you discuss what that is. And then I want to tie that back in to your origin story and then have you explain more of that. But that'd be an awesome catalyst for the discussion to come.
Sure. Okay, so I guess I'll just tell you a little bit about where we are now, and then I can tie it back to Chow Media Group and the origin story. So right now, we actually have a very similar mission to you. Our mission is to help millennial New Yorkers become more informed and impactful. So what that means is that, in the media space right now, especially during COVID, there's so much noise in the news. There's, hey, here's how to stay safe. Here, you got to watch out for this and that. And what we found was that there's so much information out there, but not really a practical way of using it in your own life, A, and B, that a lot of people wanted to help, they just didn't know how. So our goal was really to help New Yorkers, A, understand what the heck is going on. Like, some of I'll go into the origin story, but originally we were doing fun events. We were throwing parties all around New York City. So when COVID hit, obviously we couldn't do that anymore. But we found that no one knew what was going on. So we're like, you know what? We're content people. We like to write. We have always loved and supported New York City. Let's just put out this information. So we started doing guides, breakdowns of how to stay safe at home from COVID. We brought in experts like Oren, actually, how to find a new job. I missed COVID. And then we started really diving more and more into these difficult topics. So we broke down the pandemic unemployment. We broke down renters' rights.
That's important.
We broke down all these issues that you read about in the news that are, people are being affected by. You may be personally affected by, but you don't really understand what is going on in a way that it's like talking to a friend. So we've always tried to do that, is be kind of like a Vox or explanatory journalism for the millennial New Yorker.
That's so funny you say that. I'm going to bring up Jeff Bankoff at one point too with something pertaining to diversity, because I know you have a particular interest in that, and that's extremely important to you. It should be to everyone. But even before Chat Media Group,
Yeah.
you were in advertising and you were a representative for directors and you worked for production companies for a while.
Yeah.
So what did that experience bring to what you're doing now as a independent person and just an entrepreneur in general with a full-on team for a media group?
Sure. So when I first started, I started in advertising in like 2011. I'm 31 now, so I came into advertising. I just knew I wanted to be in movies. I wanted to be in TV production. I started off interning, and at the time, digital wasn't a big thing. It was still TV. Like you have these $1 million commercials for 60 seconds for like a Pampers ad or like a Nike ad, and it was really like my second or third year where digital started to creep in. Digital commercials people used to like scoff at them. They'd be like, ugh, like who's doing digital? Like, ugh, what are these budgets? They're smaller budgets. It's like a $30,000 budget compared to like $1 million or $150,000 budget, right? So,
which is so funny too, because that's happening now with TikTok. It's like $0 budget compared to, yeah.
Exactly. But like the reach is incredible with TikTok, right? So I noticed this transformation of leading into digital, but at the same time, my job was how an actor has an agent. I was an agent for directors for television commercials. It's like so niche. I have no idea how I got into it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, most people don't even realize that's a job. Like you're like, oh yeah, someone had to direct a television commercial. Well, someone had to help them get the commercial. So that was what my job was.
Yeah.
But the thing is that so we call it sales in advertising. But I was like a sales rep or director's agent, and essentially I was going from agency to agency, giving presentations as to why they should be working with our directors and our production company. So I learned a lot of sales through that. I learned a lot about rejection through that. And I also learned that there really was no diversity in media. There would be times where I would go to an advertising agency, and I went all across the entire country. I was in New York, I was in Maine, I was in LA, I was in North Carolina, Omaha, Nebraska, of all places. But in so many of these rooms, you are presenting to executive producers, the creatives, the people who write the commercials, and I would say 80 to 90% of the time, I was either the only female, or I was one of the only white people in the whole room. So which led me to think and realize that, there is such a lack of diversity in media already, what you see on the screen. But when you're in these advertising agencies, when you're in these rooms and you realize that there's no representation within the creators themselves, that's an issue. And I think after this was when the whole Pepsi and Kylie Jenner debacle happened, there were just all these commercials and things where they were a little bit tone deaf. And if there was a little bit more either diversity within the creators in the offices, or maybe there is diversity, but maybe they're just not listened to, or maybe they're not in a place of leadership, then we wouldn't have these problems of having one-dimensional characters and storytelling that continue the rhetoric of ignorance or racism in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
So that really was a huge stimulus for me to want to create a media platform, or just create something that I could showcase people who look like me or my friends, or just diversity, not just in terms of race or sexuality, but also in terms of class, or in terms of where you are in life. You hear about all these incredible startup founders, but you never really hear about the person who's just starting off, or maybe they're in the middle stage. And it's important to hear those stories, because then that allows you or anyone to be like, oh yeah, I could do that too. So
Exactly. Empowering. I resonate with that in so many levels. And I have actually some quotes here that remind me not only of diversity, but of this aspect of storytelling. As you did an interview with someone, I forget the exact article, I can link it below, but you said, when you were working on We Were Wanderers, which we'll get
yeah.
into when you were doing a traveling blog, 17 countries in 2 years, unbelievable. But you said, I truly believe that we are better people when we understand one another's perspectives and cultures. My hope is that this will do just that. And the intention was to do it with We Were Wanderers, but it's the same thing now with Chow Media Group, which is so fascinating. And what I wanted to bring up with Jeff Bankoff, the CEO of and chairman of Vox Media, is when he was asked what he would do differently when starting off as CEO, he said diversity would be the main thing. So
Wow.
I'll link that video below as well, but I just thought it was, out of all the things you can talk about, tech, media, ads, like he said diversity, because it starts, like that's the core of everything. Team is
It is.
everything.
It is, and I don't have the exact statistics, but I believe that when you have diverse leadership, I think it increases the business by like 44%. It's like a really, I'll have to find the stats, don't quote me on it, but I will say that diversity in leadership generates more business revenue across the board for Fortune 500 companies, for, you know, your up and coming business. It's different minds, you know?
Yeah, different perspectives, which help bring in different creativity. But for you, you're someone who has a really unique upbringing. So I'd love to talk about your diversity in your own way of how you grew up in Manhattan and Brooklyn, and how that, which is being exuded through what you're doing now, how that contributes to the Chow Media Group.
Yeah. So I am a born and raised New Yorker. I was born in Chinatown, New York Presbyterian. I was born like right across the street from Pace University. And I'm a first generation Chinese American. My parents came over in 1985. We lived in like I think it was like a third floor walk up on Canal Street. And it was like, I have two siblings, so it was the five of us in this tiny, like 2.5 bedroom, like 200 square feet, tiny apartment. We moved to Brooklyn when I was like 8, and I grew up in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, which is at the time a neighborhood. And if you've ever seen Saturday Night Fever, this is the neighborhood that it takes. This is the neighborhood next to the neighborhood that it takes place in. So we don't have a great like story behind Bensonhurst, though I could go a little bit. I'm gonna go a little bit on a tangent, which is Bensonhurst.
Yeah.
It's about 20 minutes from Coney Island, but it used to be called Bensonhurst by the Sea, originally because it was developed as like a rich person's retreat in the late 1800s, early 1900s, because Coney Island was once one of the most prestigious retreats for the wealthy in New York, and Coney Island was clean, it was beautiful, it had all these amazing amusement parks, so they built Bensonhurst by the Sea so you could have these like millionaire mansions by it. But of course, when they finished building it, Coney Island wasn't cool anymore, so it moved on. But anyway, that's my little tidbit about Bensonhurst.
Wow. So, and I find it so fascinating too that a lot of the great founders now come from immigrants or their first generation. So that adds like a motivation behind it, or like just a subconscious drive that others can't attain because they just didn't grow up the same way.
Yeah, I think, you know what? I think that's really interesting you bring that up, because I haven't thought about it, but I think it makes complete sense when you say it. Like, you know, like my parents came from China, did not speak the language, and came here and were able to put, you know, like 3 kids through college. So it's pretty incredible. But, you know, my cousin always jokes that, so my cousin is in the military and he does like insane 20-mile runs. And he's always like, I'm always like, oh my God, Denny, how do you do that? And he's like, we're peasant stock. It's in our blood.
Yeah, exactly. Hardworking nature. It's funny because I'm not first generation. I'm like, I think it would be third, but still like Italian family. They're like horses, you know, they work extremely hard. So I get some of that blood from them. So I like how your brother runs 20 milers, and kudos to him being in the military and armed forces. That's awesome.
Yeah. Where are you from?
I'm from New Jersey,
Yeah.
and my great grandfather, they lived in Monteforte, Cilantro, Italy, Monteforte, Italy, and they came over on the Giuseppe Verdi boat around like 1900. So pretty cool. Created a whole new life for the then family we have now, and the family that was made from him. So that's why that stuff to me, and like your story, especially the upbringing part, is super fascinating, because all that, like, just as you were a dot connector for being a sales rep for TV directors, like, I like connecting those dots with upbringing to like character now and what you're doing now.
Yeah. Oh my God, you're like bringing, you're making me realize a lot. Yeah, you're right. It definitely is. And my upbringing was, I culturally at home, we spoke Chinese. We were very Chinese at home, but my neighborhood was very Italian, and school was just, very American. So I kind of grew up in this like double culture. And when you talk to anyone who's a first gen, you kind of like hear this. You kind of have this like just general basic understanding where you're like, yeah, like home was different, but you just always kind of had to like figure out how to adapt to both sides.
Yeah.
So I've always, I think because of my upbringing in Bensonhurst, which was so community based, it was like, I was a stoop kid, like I knew all of my neighbors. I would walk into my friends' houses. I was there for Sunday dinner. Like you knew the whole, the guy at the deli knew your whole family. Like it was just, we had block parties. So it was always so communal. And I think that has always been ingrained in me to always be building a community, whether I realized it or not. Like I've always wanted to, oh, you like running? Oh, my other friend likes running. Like you guys should get together. Oh, you're looking for a job? Oh, my friend's hiring. You guys should get together. I think I just feel as if I really valued my upbringing because I was able to be in this like, hey, like the whole neighborhood raised me, and I got things that I wasn't able to get at home. I was able to get from like my neighbor's family or whatever, So I think it's to be a really well developed person, need that influence and guidance from more than one person. So that's why I really believe in the value of the community. So I got sniffles.
Yeah, no, and there's two avenues I want to go down. One, with the fact that contributes to traveling, but also I know I don't know how recent it was, but you guys made an article for Chow about a mom and pop restaurant, and the fact that for the same reasons or the same aspects we talked about was community building, a lot of people shared it within the community and restaurant, and it got over like 10,000 views. So I thought that was such a cool connection, and the fact that they played out. So I'd love to go down the ladder of that. So talking about the article, and then I would love to get into the traveling aspect and the fact that I know you dropped out of school for a little bit, which I can resonate with. But yeah, we'll get to that. So
yeah. Oh, you've done your research. I love this. This is a great interview. You're a great interviewer. So the article you're referencing is it's about this Italian salumeria, aka a pork shop, a pork store.
Yeah, we work with one client who they have a salumeria, a restaurant, and then a cafe in one.
Oh.
Yeah. So
right.
I can relate to that, but yeah.
Yeah, so this shop is it's called A&S Pork Store in Gravesend, Brooklyn. Everyone should go. Shout out to the Joe Paolillo and his father. They've been around for, I want to say 70 years.
Wow.
The shop has been around. Joe and his father run it, and his father came from Italy, worked there since he was like 9 years old, and then when he was of a certain age, he ended up buying it from the owners, and it became his shop. And it's just been a neighborhood staple for all these years. in the very first one of the first iterations of Chow Meg, we had the newsletter where we would basically have a local take us to their neighborhood and show us their favorite places to eat, drink, shop, and see. So my buddy Francesco, who grew up in Gravesend, he was like, I got to take you to this one spot. And he was like, I used to come here as a kid all the time. And he's 38 or 39. And he's like, I haven't been there in like 7 or 8 years. I hope they remember me. Right. So we walk into the shop, and it's super Italian. It's green. It's got like cheese hanging and dried meats hanging from the ceiling. Like there's just jarred sauces and fresh pastas and meats. And when you walk in, it was like an explosion of just like warm, delicious flavors. It's so energetic. And I'm like, oh, I hope that they remember Francesco. I'm not sure. And the second that we get inside, I just hear someone go, "Hey, Francesco, where you been?" And it was like a movie. And then it was like a whirlwind after that. We walk in, Joe Palillo, the son, he comes over, gives Francesco a big hug. This is pre-COVID, by the way.
Yeah.
It's pre-COVID. And gives him a big hug. He's like, "Where you been? How's your mother?" There was like a line, I remember, inside. It was like 2 people inside. And it just so happened that the 2 people that were inside also knew Francesco and his mom. And they start talking about like the family. Joe's dad, Joe Palillo Sr. walks out. He starts chatting with everybody, gives me a hug. Like, I just met them. They're giving me hugs. Next thing I know, Joe Palillo, the father, pulls out some like homemade limoncello that for me to drink, for us to try. They're giving us sandwiches and all this stuff. And it was just such a wonderful experience. I went on a tangent. But being in this shop that is so friendly, it's so neighborhoody, it feels like home. Like he hadn't been there in 7 years and they still knew him. And that is the type of community that I grew up with, that I loved. And so when I was there, I really knew that as I was there for like 2 or 3 hours that day. And I remember every single customer that came in, they had a lot that just like came in. Yeah. Every single person was greeted by name. I remember that very distinctly. And
amazing.
I know because of that. So when we did share the article, and I mean, it was like, this was within the first week. I think it was the first week or 2 that we launched a website last year. So like, in the beginning, we're like, maybe you'll get a few views here and there. Maybe you get a few hundred. You're happy to hit 1,000. And we had just like, I think we had like 12,000 views that week. Maybe that week, within like 2 or 3 days after launching that article, because when he shared it on his social, all of his customers were so supportive. Every single person was like, "This is the best place. Everyone has to come here." Everyone was sharing and sharing and sharing. And it's just a sign of like how impactful a small business can be for their community. The people who've come to this place, to this shop, they are not just getting food. They are meeting their neighbors. They are making friends. They are making lifelong relationships. So that's why I think it's so important to, maintain small businesses.
Yeah, they have more personal connections and like personal feel than any other business really ever will. Just so beautiful. But it also shows the power of word of mouth and marketing and like just knowing a lot of people in the community.
Yeah.
You said 12,000 plus in what time span was it?
It was like 2-3 days.
Wow.
Yeah. So like I think it was like the first week. So I remember like opening up my Google Analytics and I was like, wait, is this right? Is this right?
Yeah.
I mean, and I remember calling our developer and be like, "Hey, I think there's something wrong with the website. I think there's a glitch." And she goes, "Nope, it's all real." I was like, "Oh my God." So it was really incredible to see that happen.
Yeah. And now the goal is to duplicate some of that, or you've been duplicating a lot of that with small business highlights and helping people find the best places within New York City.
Yeah. And, I think especially, it's always been one of our goals has always been to support New York City. Like the whole reason why I started this was because I just wanted to, I think I was missing something in my life in working in sales, which I felt I wanted to make it in some way. I just didn't know what it was. And I was like, I don't have any great skills. I don't know how to cure cancer. But I know that I can talk to people and I can write, and I think I can help, my circle around me. I'm going to do what little I can do around me. And that's kind of where this stemmed from, was like, I want to be able to tell these stories of these amazing people and small businesses. So,
yeah, a point to lean into your strengths for sure. But the other avenue that I'll come back to was, did your 2 years of traveling help you cultivate a better storytelling aspect to you? Because you were already so community oriented and so much of a connector when you were younger from your upbringing and such. But what layer did traveling add to that when you were focusing on the traveling blog and just going to all these different places, which I think, like I mentioned before, stemmed from you took some time off of school. So I'd love to hear the insight as to how that contributed to everything now too.
Yeah. I went traveling in 2015. Okay, so in 2014, I was turning 25, and I had been working in advertising for a few years already, and I was like, I don't know, I kind of had hit all the marks you should. I had a really good job, I was making good money, had great friends, but I still felt like something was missing, which is kind of what I was talking about. Like, I didn't necessarily feel fulfilled, and I wanted to be doing something more. I just didn't know what it was. And so I was like, you know what? I want to do something cool for my 25th birthday. I was supposed to go to Machu Picchu with a girlfriend of mine, but then last minute she couldn't make it because of work. So I was like, I'm just going to go by myself. So, but then I looked at the ticket and I'm like, oh, Machu Picchu is so far. I don't know if I can do this by myself. And instead I saw tickets to Nicaragua, to Managua, were like $225 or something silly like that. So I was like, I'm going to do this. So I went to Nicaragua by myself on my 25th birthday. I flew there, and I was like, it's like I took high school Spanish, but where I went, it was like no one spoke English. I remember landing at the airport, and like all the cab drivers are outside, and they're like, everyone's like asking you like, where do you want to go? Blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, I got to remember this. Anyway, ended up befriending a really great taxi driver. His name was Guillermo, and he ends up driving me to where I was going, which was Ometepes, which is like a 2 or 3 hour car ride, and then a boat, and then another 30-minute ride to the island because I wanted to check out these volcanoes. But that whole trip, it was like 3 or 4 days. I was by myself. I stayed in hostels, and I met all these amazing people who were traveling. They were just like living their lives, and they were doing it for so cheap. They were just doing such an amazing job. Can you hold on? Sorry, 1 second.
Yeah.
Sorry, my cat was like meowing.
No, I have my dog right next to me.
Hi.
Oh.
Hi. Oh, shit.
Get her in the interview.
Yeah, I know, right? Okay, sorry. So what was I saying? Oh, so I had recap. I was in Nicaragua by myself. I met all these incredible people who were traveling themselves, and I don't know. Sometimes it just takes you being outside of your environment and just being somewhere else entirely, thrown into something new for you to realize that there's so much more out there. There's so many more opportunities. If you're not happy, you could do something different.
Yeah.
So, yes.
I was going to bring up too, I went to Costa Rica and had that same experience. You get out of the airport and there's taxis everywhere. There's literally people it's like you're in a Hollywood show when you have those big events and you go on the runway and people take pictures. Like that. They had signs holding up like, are you here for this or that? I was literally going down the aisle. So that independence as well, on top of being in such new environments, opens your perspective.
Yeah.
You get really, really strong internally.
Yeah. And I think what I did not realize was that, traveling on your own, and eventually that was September. And then the next February, I did a much larger trip across 15 countries or so, something like that. But I realized that you spend so much of your time beforehand kind of just like going with the flow, following what society tells you to do, what your parents tell you to do, what you think you should be doing. But when you travel on your own, you're really exercising your own individual decision making skills. And when you don't do that, you kind of lose a sense of who you are and maybe your identity. So I'm not speaking for everyone, but I know for myself, and I know a lot of people I've talked to, kind of around that age, 25-ish, quarter life crisis, or maybe any time in your 20s, will experience a time period where you're like, I don't really know what I want to do, and I don't really know what is happening. And I think that comes from not exercising that decision making. You know, you're so used to relying on friends for like, should I text that guy or girl? What should I do for lunch? Should I go on this trip? Should I do this or that? And like, we rely a lot on other people and we don't listen to ourselves enough. So I think that after doing the Nicaragua trip, I was like, oh my God, this is so good. Like I forgot, like I was like, oh yeah, I can fucking do anything now, you know? Like I climbed a fucking volcano. I didn't speak the language. Like I got this. So I feel like it came back with like a vengeance. I was like, yeah, let's do this. So.
And when you came back is when you started Chow Media Group, right?
No, not yet. It was, I came back and went back to work, and then I ended up leaving in February to go traveling. And in February we went traveling. Well, not me, just me. I went solo, but I had friends who would meet up with me at different lengths of the journey. And I mean, that was just also an amazing experience. Just traveling, just like having no worries. You know, you're like, I'm traveling, I'm good, I'm just seeing the world. The most stressful thing is trying to figure out like what am I going to be doing the next day, or where am I going to eat that day. So that was really fun and great. And I came back because I had to go to jury duty, and my last job didn't let me go to jury duty, so I had missed 2 of them, right? And if I had missed the third, I think they fine you or like I don't forget what it is, and my sister was having a baby, so I was like, all right, I have to be back. I ended up starting the travel blog, which is called Chow for Now. And I just kind of like wrote everything that I had done. And I felt that, at the time, there were just so many websites that were like, top 10 places you should visit in New York. And it'd be like Times Square, Herald Square. So it was just like all these travel sites were really just subjecting a location to its top tourist destinations. And I had seen the harm in advertising when that happens, when you kind of take a person, or you know, you take a very nuanced version of a character. What does that mean for the people who watch and read this media that you're putting out, right? If someone in Idaho is going to see this commercial about a can of Pepsi ending Black Lives Matter, ending a riot, like what does that mean? So I really was trying to pitch the stories of how incredible it was being in these places to a lot of different travel sites. And pitching is very, very hard as a writer, or especially a new writer. And I didn't get a lot of great feedback back. If I did, editors were usually saying like, hey, like we would love if you could do like a top 10 recap or a listicle, because that's what will get us clicks. So I decided that I wanted to continue telling the stories of these, incredible people. And the thing is, like, to be extraordinary or like an incredibly interesting person doesn't mean you have to be famous or rich or like have launched a really.
I know plenty. I know one kid in particular.
Yeah.
He travels probably like every month. Doesn't really post about it. Has a 6-figure recurring revenue a month business.
Oh, wow.
Wait, is it? No, it might be. Yeah, it's 6. And yeah, it's just like he's fulfilled. He's just happy.
Wow, that's amazing. What's his business?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, one thing to know, he sells. I think there's a difference with service and product-based businesses, and if you want to do that, product might be the way to go sometimes.
Yeah.
You can with service, but it's a little harder unless it's like automated. But the one thing I was going to ask with you is, how do you balance not at making content that's like top 10 blank or like for clicks, but making it appealing with this personal touch, right? Because you've been on both sides for long periods of time. So what have you found now, if you can like boil it into advice for someone or just advice for your younger self even?
Yeah. The content I originally started off was I wrote what I wish that I wanted to read. And, in some cases it's a good place to start, but then eventually to think about who your target audience is and what they need. The most important thing is, what type of value are you providing for your reader? What do you want them to take away from it? And like, I think the best way of describing this is like, what is the gap? What is the gap between the problem that your reader is facing and what you can offer? And if you can help them, your reader, get to the solution quicker in your own personal way, then you will succeed in content. So, even, and the thing is, there's no such thing as like consistently hitting a viral post or like an incredible post. Like, we still have posts and articles that like don't do as well as the others. We've had posts that have been shared 30,000 times. We've had posts that I thought would be shared as many times, and it's just like 100. So it's constantly a test. So you're constantly reinventing the wheel. And I think it's really important that readers or anyone who's ever even trying to do anything is that iteration is essential, and to not beat yourself up over the results of one post or one thing or one podcast, right? Like, every single one is leading you closer to being better and better at it. And just beating yourself up over the outcome of one is not going to be beneficial to you. Yeah.
It's like that creative pursuit of repetition, but I often find that too, because a lot of people seek perfection, and perfection's like, we put up just a YouTube snippet from one episode we just did, and this guy Eric said perfection's the enemy of progress. So it's like that, not judging yourself, but just consistently trying to create in order to reach the outcome. Yeah, I love that a lot. That's so spot on. And the other thing I was going to mention, sort of in a closing out type way, is I know this year has been particularly tough with media companies in general, and especially those who rely on advertising. So for you, I know at one point you lost like a main revenue source. So what was the pivot? Because I know it was events at one point, and now it's probably more online. But how have you pivoted, and what has been a big learning within this year of change amongst especially media in its own way changing?
Media has had to have one of the most tragic changes. I mean, I won't say tragic, but in a good way. I definitely feel for the larger sites that were, really relying on ad revenue, who have had to do tons of layoffs, like BuzzFeed, Vox even had to do layoffs, etc. I feel fortunate that because we're such a small team that we were able to adapt and pivot pretty quickly. It's still a struggle. We're still figuring it out as we go along, but like we're, as my partner likes to say, she says, we're building the parachute as we're jumping out.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Was that the same? Like, we're building the jumper.
I think it was like Reid Hoffman mentioned in a quote, it's like a startup is building a plane as you building a parachute as you jump off the plane or something. Yeah,
that's exactly what we're doing. So pre-COVID, we were doing events primarily for millennial New Yorkers. We did, and our goal was still community, but it was just like very fun, not taking ourselves events. We did like drunken dumpling tours around Chinatown, pop-up dinners, comedy shows. We had a huge event every month that was called the Friend of a Friend Party, aka a party for single people who hate online dating but love to party. And that drew like 200 people plus a month. So we had small events, like 5 people, and then we had 200 plus events. And so that was like our main source of revenue. We did tough brand sponsorships and partnerships. And after COVID, we were like, okay, all of our events are gone. What are we doing? We didn't even know what we were doing. We tried virtual events. We did the Instagram lives. And I think we really kind of fell into the more like, I think we should be the more this resource for New Yorkers, this explanatory breakdowns, making difficult topics understandable and helping to create an infrastructure where when people who want to help or the people who want to be impactful in their lives can find an easier way to do it.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of civic engagement and push that. Our business model we still do some partnerships with brands. We do consulting on the side. And one of the things that we have been doing is working with small businesses and people who are kind of like side hustlers. We didn't realize this, but sometimes you don't realize how much progress you've made until you talk to someone who hasn't. And you're like, oh, wow, like, okay, I'm a little further than I thought. So because we've been helping, we've always been huge proponents of small businesses. We've had small businesses reach out to us to be like, hey, can you help us? So we help them build up their digital presence. And that's not just through Instagram, it's through like Google Business. How do you how do you build up your Google Business profile? How do you think about what customers are saying about you? How do you turn on to your current customer base and have them be your biggest advocates? What are some great marketing ideas that you can use to draw them back in? So we work with small businesses, and we also have had people reach out to us about like, hey, what do we do to get started with my side hustle? So we do consulting, so services at the moment. Eventually, we are thinking about maybe offering up some sort of course or curriculum just for small business owners and startup folks. But, that's early on. We're still figuring it out.
No, yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that last point up again, because I was going to say we're all figuring it out as we go. Even Kanye West is figuring out as he goes. So we all have a plan, but you got to adjust. And I love how, because every media company has an aspect of agency to them. Talk about laundry service or 24/7 laundry service when they first started. I know Vox has an aspect of that because they build out tech products too for others. And it's also fascinating that you're getting into education, because the one thing I talked to a friend with about the other day was this gap in like this big void with education, in that it's taught incorrectly, because one, we shouldn't have to learn like diction or exact definitions, because not to rely too much on the internet, but it's here now. So it should be more of a thing of where do I find these resources, but then can I learn how to learn? Because can I learn how to comprehend different things, or I research, or different resources I get? So to that point, it's cool that you're going down that really important path, because that's a huge void that I've seen, and I'm sure others see.
Yeah, I think even, thank you for saying that too. Even like, one thing that we've really learned is like the concept of research is even a learned skill. Like we don't think about it, but like, we've done tons of surveys with our followers and readers, and it's like, so many people kind of gather their information from their news feeds, from their friends, from what's, kind of like what's like the trending, right? And how, like, I think people don't really talk about too much is what we do, fake news, but is media bias. I'm not saying there's a difference between the two, whereas media bias is like headlines will highlight certain tidbits of information to make you lean a different specific way. So, yeah. So saying that, like, we kind of discovered, like, even one of our last posts that we just in our articles, it's free resources for small business owners every New Yorker should know about. And this article highlights things like resources I haven't seen on any other site. I haven't seen, there's like the New York City has a $3 million accelerator and program to support Black entrepreneurs because they want to grow Black tech and small business owners. Black owners, Black entrepreneurs, their businesses have dropped by 70% in New York State alone. And in the national average, small business has dropped to 40. Black owners have dropped 40%. So it's like knowing these statistics, finding that information, and then kind of gauging like how can we help these people. So in this article, we have breakdowns of like what can Black entrepreneurs do. What about minority and women business owners? So kind of like on the diversity scale we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and what you said as well with like making the internet smaller.
Yeah.
But in a personal way. So it's cool to see like the advice you're giving is stuff you're abiding by for sure.
Yeah, and for me, I'm like such a visual learner. Like sometimes it's hard for me to like read something and be like, okay, I have to do it, or I have to see someone else do it, and then I can understand it that way. So I mean, I try to take that approach to whatever we put out.
Yeah, for sure. And you're building in public, and I appreciate you hopping on to talk in depth about your whole journey, your whole life, and what you're doing with Chow Media Group. If there's anything else you wanted to mention, and also mention where you would want people to follow you and follow Chow, but I'll leave the floor to you to cap it off.
Well, thank you so much for having me on this. This was such a lovely interview. I've done quite a few of these, and this was definitely one of my favorites so far. So thank you for that. I think for anyone, if you would like to follow us at chowmag.com. That's CIAOOO. It's 3 O's, MAG. The name actually came because originally when we were a travel magazine, I wanted it to feel like anytime you were reading about a new different town, like it would feel like this I would give a little bit of tangent, which is when I was in Rome by myself, and I was staying at a friend's mom's bed and breakfast. I had lost my phone. I was by myself. I had to take the train from the bus from the train station, all this stuff to the house. And I was like so nervous. I was so scared. And I remember getting to their house, and she comes out and she gives me this big hug, like ciao, like this big grandma hug. And I just felt so warm and so homey, and that's kind of what I wanted anyone to feel when they join Chow Mag. It's like to feel this hug, to feel this like neighborhood, this friendly, this is a safe place. And so if anyone wants to support us, follow us at chowmag.com, sign up for the newsletter, and follow us on Instagram at chowmag.
Yeah, I appreciate that detail as to how the name came about. It's always fascinating to me. Appreciate that. And all the rabbit holes we went down. But yeah, we'll talk soon. Follow them, please, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm super pumped.